Her triumphs, I took a group of women that didn't believe in themselves, and I just believed in them. Her trials.
I never wanted to go to practice. I was losing a ton of weight.
Her story.
I just put my faith in God and just trusted the system.
Her why.
I want people to see what I did and say, oh, that's so awesome. I'm gonna be better than that. That would be how I hope that this journey ends.
This is Her Why, where we tell the stories from BYU women's sports. Here is your host, Lauren McLean.
Joining me now is Carlie Ellett, who is a BYU alum, the 2014 intramural flag football champion, Travis Kelce apologist, and wife of Kansas City Chiefs assistant running backs coach Porter Ellett. Carlie, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yes.
I'm chatting with you again.
Yes, it's good to see you. First of all, congrats to you and your family on the Chiefs' victory on Sunday night. That was awesome. Walk me through what Sunday was like for you and your family from start to finish, because I can't even imagine what that day was like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to sound like braggy or anything, but we kind of have a routine now for what Super Bowl Sunday looks like for us.
Right.
We've done it a few times. We don't sleep very well Saturday night. We're all a little bit anxious and nervous and excited. And then Sunday morning, we get up early. We have sacrament meeting. Actually, we've had it at each of the team hotels for every Super Bowl we've been to. COVID's looked a little bit different the year we went to Tampa, but we've held it every single Super Bowl Sunday. In fact, Griffin, my youngest, got blessed at the Super Bowl last year, which was cool. So we have that around 9. So, and I'm a stickler on the getting in your Sunday best. So dress the kids up for church, just like we're going. And it's in a team meeting room, so it looks a little bit different, but the feeling is the same. And we get about...
Wait, I have a question about that, though. Is that like, are, the members on the staff come, or is it just your family? Like, how does that work?
So we actually have our first year in Miami, we probably had over 120 people. We had a number of players who were members. We had a couple guys from the University of Utah. Of course, Dan Sorensen from BYU was on the team at the time. We had 3 or 4 coaches who were members. We had several strength coaches. So it's the coaches, the players, and whoever they brought to the Super Bowl that come.
Way cool.
So it ends up being quite a big group. Of course, COVID was different, but then these last 2, we've had over 100 at each of those sacrament meetings as well. So it does take a little bit of prep Saturday night. Porter went down Saturday night and prepped the sacrament trays and set up chairs and stuff in there because we do have a big group. And then it's a little bit different in terms of the length of sacrament meeting. It's quick. It's an opening prayer. It's an opening hymn. And then they administer the sacrament. We have a spiritual thought, and then we have a closing prayer, and everybody's got to start getting on buses. And this year we had to keep it especially quick and efficient because the game was so much earlier. It was West Coast time, whereas we played, 2 of our 4 on East Coast time. So the game was at night. This time it was at 3:00, in the afternoon, and the buses started leaving at 10:45. So as soon as we finished sacrament meeting, we went back to the hotel, changed out of our church clothes, got into our Chiefs gear, and loaded up on the bus. So that was nice because normally we just sit around in the hotel all day waiting for the game, and it is so painful. I don't know if you've seen the Kelce documentary, and there's a scene where Carlie her dad is just sitting there staring at her as she's putting on makeup, getting ready for the game. And she just freaks out, quit staring at me, quit, and I've been in that exact situation with my dad. I can't make time go any faster. So anyways, this was nice. We hurried and went and got everybody changed. I got Griffin settled. I did not take him to the game. You have to pay for everybody to go, even babies.
Really?
So he was not invited.
Wow.
Yes. Even he was 2 months old last year, and I would have had to buy him a ticket.
That's crazy.
We get our 2 comp tickets. I'm only going to pay for another one if you can talk. So he's not there yet to tell the tale. So anyways, he got to stay at the team hotel for the game, and me and the 2 older kids got in with, of course, grandparents, Porter's sister, and we head over to the stadium where they have a family and friends tailgate just for the Chiefs organization. That's really fun. They've got all different types of food out, desserts, games, and things like that. Mostly to keep your mind off of what's about to take place, I think. So we killed a couple hours there and then made our way into Allegiant Stadium, and we watched Porter warm up his players, and of course Patrick, which is always fun to see. And then finally the game starts, and that's like, I'm nervous the whole week, and it gets worse as the weekend drags on. But then as soon as like kickoff is as soon as the national anthem starts getting sung, it really sinks in. Like, we are playing for the Super Bowl, and that's when my nerves start to get the best of me. So my dad always sits next to me for these and tries to like give me pep talks throughout the whole thing. And then we went underway, and we had a fumble right off the bat. And I thought, okay, like, we're going to actually come out and dominate one of these Super Bowls, so I don't have to stress the whole time.
Yeah.
And that was not the case at all. So, of course, we ended up going into only the second overtime in Super Bowl history, I believe. And it was interesting to watch because people keep making a big deal like, oh, well, the Chiefs have now benefited twice from these rule changes.
Right.
And they forget our first AFC championship, we lost in overtime to the Patriots and never got to touch the ball. Then the following year, we beat the Bills in the playoffs thanks to those overtime rules.
Right.
So they changed it for the Bills. And then, of course, now in the Super Bowl, we used that knowledge to our advantage and ended up winning there in overtime. And it's honestly not the excitement or joy you would think you would experience when you've won the Super Bowl. For me, at least, it's just a sense of relief.
Wow.
I think my first one, when we went the first time, I was elated. But then after you lose a Super Bowl and you know how bad it sucks to be in that spot, you don't ever want to be in that again. So it's honestly just a relief that you didn't lose it. And by the time we get to the parade, then I'm excited and happy and stuff. But then it still takes a couple weeks for it to really sink in. But in that moment, I just felt ultimate relief. And then it was, okay, we got to get these kids down to the field to celebrate with Dad. So we made our way down and found Porter, and that's always a really special moment to finally get to hug him after these are long seasons. So we got to celebrate with Porter and his family, and that was really fun. And then it's take kids back to the hotel to go to bed, and then we hit the after party with Ludacris and Post Malone.
Yes. Wow.
So yeah, Chainsmokers. It was a good time. We had a lot of fun, but not a lot of sleep to be had yet.
Hey, and who needs it, right? I mean, how often do you go to the Super Bowl? Well, for you, a few times. For
4 times
people,
in 7 seasons, but who's counting?
So is that kind of surreal for you still? Like, I mean, especially the Kansas City Chiefs. You got Patrick Mahomes, you got Travis Kelce. These guys are like superstars, right? Is it still a little bit surreal to you where you're like, I can just hit up an after party and I'm hanging out with these people and these musicians? Is that kind of weird for you still?
Definitely. I don't know that that'll ever sink in or get old.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked to, you get to know other families in this league, and there's people who have never even been to the playoffs. So it's not something I take for granted. Now, obviously, we've been fortunate to go to the playoffs every year. We've lost at different stages in those playoffs, but to not even get to the postseason, like, I don't think people realize how hard that alone is. And then to advance throughout the postseason and go to the Super Bowl. So no, I don't think that will ever get old, or it will always be exciting and like, man, I can't believe we're here. So
you've now experienced 4 Super Bowls, won 3 with Porter and the Chiefs. What's been the coolest part about this year's experience specifically that's maybe been a little bit different from previous years?
This year, I think it would be twofold. One, I would say the new fans that were brought in this year. People have talked to me about football, like friends and family who have never been interested in it before, and now all of a sudden, a certain pop star might have introduced them to the game, but now they're falling in love with the game. Particularly women, has been awesome, because I've always loved football. I know you've always loved football, but that's not necessarily the norm for a lot of females. So to see like the growing number of women who are into it has been really fun. And so it was fun chatting with fans who a year ago were only concerned about the halftime show, and this year we're concerned about the outcome of the game. So that was really fun. And then the whole going back to back and knowing what it takes to do that, that was probably the most like monumental thing I would take away from this third one. But yeah, they're all great.
That's so cool.
I can't say one's better than another. They're all great.
Well, I was going to say, people probably don't know, like, you hear so many stories about Porter and how he's gotten to where he's at, but you are a competitor. Like, you are an amazing athlete. You're a competitor. So you probably see these games different than, I'm not saying, I'm sure a lot of the wives are competitors as well, but I feel like you probably see it and appreciate it on a different level. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I don't think it helps that, I graduated in journalism as well and went down that sports path for a while there. And so I follow like all the sports media.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like a double-edged sword though, because I had myself convinced every week, like, oh man, we're going to lose according to all, I watch Dan Patrick every morning, Good Morning Football, I listen to all that stuff. And the coaches don't have the time to do that, but I listen to it all. And so, and I probably talked to Porter way too much about it, but it is nice because it's something I feel like we're doing together. I might not be the one in the office drawing up X's and O's or naming cool plays or anything like that, but it doesn't happen with his support, without the support at home. And so I try to do my best to make sure I'm handling that aspect of it so he can worry about those X's and O's. So I do feel like I have some skin in the game, which makes it even more fun. As a lifelong sports fan, the Phoenix Suns made me cry all the time when I was in junior high. But then when you get to a point where your livelihood depends on these wins and losses, it's a totally different experience. Like, it's the highest of highs and it can be the lowest of lows. So anyways, I've had a blast being involved in it. It's not to say it's not hard or it doesn't come without sacrifices, but it's been really fun.
Well, you picked the right team. That's for sure.
Yes.
to get the highs. You definitely did. You mentioned that you follow a lot of the sports journalists and a lot of those stories. You recently had a viral TikTok video defending Travis Kelce's character, which I'm sure you saw a bunch of these reporters that were kind of bashing on him. What inspired you to create that video?
I'm a pretty loyal person to begin with. I don't care what you say about me or anything, but when it comes to people I love, I get really defensive. Porter, my kids included, very much in that conversation. But with Travis, I mean, this is something obviously that happened 7 years ago. It's not something that happened recently. But I think people see just these short glimpses and formulate an opinion that in reality, that's a complete stranger to you. So anybody who's been involved in sports, I don't think really cared about the Justin Tucker situation. Even last night when he and Coach Reed had a moment on the sidelines, I've seen people giving him hate for that too. And I don't think people just understand like the competitive nature and the passion and the hard work that goes into that. That wasn't him like being mean to Coach Reed or anything like that. That was just like a heat of a moment, kind of how you have a conversation on the sidelines. Yeah. So anyways, we've just had some experiences behind closed doors that most people aren't privy to that I thought, you know what, people should know this about, this is Travis too. It's not just you see a guy moving some cleats on the field. And I don't know why that was such a big deal, but it seemed to be. So I didn't know it was going to go viral. I don't really know what I'm doing on TikTok yet. Haven't quite figured it out, but it did blow up like overnight. So I was a little bit bummed because SportsCenter reached out and asked for the video, and I was like, I'm finally going to make it on SportsCenter, but they didn't end up playing it. But that's okay.
Oh man, that was your chance.
It was. I'll make another one. I've got plenty of those stories, but these guys don't do it to have people tell those stories on TikTok, So I don't know that I'll share very many of those, but and after how I watched him, I was at the game in Baltimore, and I just watched a man possessed play football. And so I'm like, it made me sad that was detracting from his performance. Because, respect him as an athlete, and also this is what he's like when nobody's looking. And so I guess that's why I made it.
And that's interesting you brought up what happened at the Super Bowl with Travis Kelce, because he's getting a ton of hate for that. Is that something from your perspective that's actually pretty normal, but since it happens to be Travis Kelce and it was caught on camera, that it was blown up? You know what I mean?
And then if you even listen to their responses after the game, Travis is a competitor, and Coach Reed wouldn't change that. Like, I don't want to put words in Coach's mouth or anything, but that's who he is as a competitor, as the best tight end, in my opinion, to ever play the game. So it got blown out of proportion big time. And I think there's also a level of chief fatigue going on around the whole country. The Patriots experienced it as well. So everything we do that could be considered a negative, I think, is going to be scrutinized to a level that wouldn't normally.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, it's not the first time it's happened. It's not the first player that
Yeah.
it's happened with. So
Yeah.
it's not a big deal. But people will make it a big deal because they want to hate on the Chiefs now. So that's okay. They can keep hating.
It makes sense. Coming up next, Carlie talks about what it's like being the wife of an NFL coach and the community she's developed with other wives. This is Her Why. Welcome back to Her Why. Our guest this week is Carlie Ellett. She's a former BYU Cougar, and her husband Porter is an assistant football coach with the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's get back to our conversation. Well, this is going to sound like a really loaded question because I'm sure there's a lot to it. But how would you describe being an NFL coach's wife? Because it's really just a college, a college coach's wife in general, because there's so much time that is taken away from the family. But how would you describe it?
So I don't think you can be adequately prepared for it. Coach Reed sat me down and had a conversation with me when he hired Porter. And he told me, like, look, this is a really intense business, and you're going to have to be really independent. You're going to have to be a warrior. And I remember thinking, like, that's a little intense. Football coaches love their, like, military comparisons and stuff. Right. And so I'm like, you're kind of pulling my leg. And at the time I was pregnant with our oldest son. I was 7 months pregnant with Brigham when Porter got the job. And so it wasn't until really the season started that I realized, like, oh, he wasn't kidding. Like, they're working 130, 135 hours a week. I am doing this by myself. And it's not just the time away. It's the things that come along with that. Like, there's been a number of Christmases I'm all alone with the kids all day. Thanksgivings are almost all that way. And still wanting my kids to have the same experiences that other kids get to have. It is hard to wrangle 3 kids and go to the pumpkin patch by yourself, but you're going to get to go to the pumpkin patch too, Yeah. So, you just kind of have to, like, put your big girl pants on. And I did. I grew a lot, I think. And I've learned to fix leaky showers. I mowed the lawn with the baby strapped to my chest, because I don't have someone who can come home and do yard work and fix things around the house. Like, you just got to figure it out yourself. So when he told me that I was going to need to be a warrior, he really meant it. And I hope I'm becoming a good enough one.
Wow. It sounds like so much work. And I know you are a warrior. But I'm sure that can cause so much stress on your life. It seems like you're handling it really well. Because of that, what's the camaraderie like with the other wives on the team? I'm sure you guys kind of buddy up sometimes because you know what each other are going through, right?
Absolutely. And we're fortunate in that we've had, like, a core group of us for a long time. Nobody really wants to leave the Chiefs right now. Yeah. And we haven't gone through a ton of turnover because we have been pretty successful. So we do a couple different things, which is really nice. We always have a coach's wives trip every year. That's a Tammy Reed staple. She picks one away game a year where we get to go with the team. And you're not, like, hanging out with the team. It's a coach's wives trip. It's for us to bond and spend time together. They're on a business trip, right? Like, they are playing a football game. So this year we got to go to Germany, which was awesome.
Wow.
So, and then we're kind of split. Like, half of them are a little bit older. They've been in the league for a long time, empty nesters. And then the other half of us kind of have, like, little kids. And so it's nice because those older ones are really good about providing really good counsel and advice. And those trips are really good places to kind of pick people's brains and get ideas of how to handle, hard parts throughout the season. And then the younger side of us will get together, and we've gone to trampoline parks and we've had play dates. And I never thought I jokingly call Gabby Whittingham my work wife because she and I see each other a lot more than we see Porter and Alex during the season. And I really didn't want to like them because Whittingham kind of, like, puts a pain in BYU fans' sides, right? And, like, they're the most lovely people you will ever meet. And she has become, like, my dear, dear friend. My go-to, anything Chiefs related, it's Gabby. And then we also do, every time someone has a baby, we're having baby showers. Like, we've had bridal showers. we celebrate each other in those big moments. We're there for each other when things don't necessarily go right. Because there've been cancer diagnoses, there's been deaths, there's been a lot of hard things. And so you really do need those women in your life because they're the only ones that really understand your lifestyle.
Right.
You know, it's really great to have family and friends, but they don't get it. They haven't lived it. So it's really important to have those relationships. And Coach Reed's wife, Tammy, has done a really good job of helping us bond and fortify those relationships. So when we do need each other, we have each other.
Right. I think that's incredible. You mentioned friends and family though too, and I saw on your Instagram that it seemed like your community was there in your front yard when you guys arrived home from the Super Bowl. What did that mean to you and Porter and your family to have all those people there to welcome you home?
Yeah, that was awesome. I had several people reach out and be like, "Hey, we want to plan a welcoming home party." We had people from our ward, we had people from our neighborhood, and so they kind of teamed up. One invited everybody from the neighborhood, one invited, members of the ward, and I can't even tell you how many people showed up. And we got home, my mom and my kids and I got home probably an hour before Porter. And so I thought, like, these people are out in the cold. They're going to be tired of this. They're not going to want to wait. And they all stood out and waited to welcome Porter home. And so we got the trophy and the rings out, and they had music, and everybody was playing catch and taking pictures and just celebrate. I mean, for people to do that for you in your life, like, that just goes a long way to show you the type of community and support we have.
Absolutely.
Which I don't know how we would do it without them. So it was really fun. We were exhausted because we hadn't slept yet, but it was a good time. It was fun to celebrate with the people who have cheered us on all year long. So it was a good time.
So cool. This is an interesting thing because you love football, you love sports, your husband's doing the job that he absolutely loves, but it takes him away from you for a long time. Have you ever had times where you're like, Porter, can we just do something a little more low key? Or do you, but I can imagine you love this as well. Do you ever have those moments though?
No, I love it. Now I do need a point where we just like kind of exhale for a second. And it's a little bit tricky when you go to the Super Bowl as often as we have, because like he'll have next week off and then they're at the combine for 10 days.
Man.
Like, it doesn't end. And so I think the off season is kind of a misnomer. One of the wives calls it non-football season, because when you say off season, people think you're off and you're not off. It's just not, there's no games.
Yeah.
So it's non-football season. Really, you're just preparing for the next thing, the draft, right? And then as soon as the draft's over, you've got OTAs and then you've got camp. And then we do have a solid break in the summer, mid-June to mid-July. And that's where we like really recoup. We come together as just like our little family. And then by the time he heads off to training camp, I'm like, all right, let's do this again. So I do appreciate like our spring and summer. I love that time. But by the time the middle of summer rolls around, it's kind of like when Christmas season comes and you're like, you can feel it in the air. That's kind of how mid-July is. Like, all right, it's time to go back to football.
Yeah, I love it. But you wouldn't trade it for anything.
No, I mean, it's just provided incredible opportunities for our family. I mean, obviously the time component is hard, but I think we've done a pretty good job as a family of balancing that. Now it does mean a lot of extra work for me, because in order to, forge those relationships between my kids and Porter, it's up to me to do that because he's not coming back from the office, right? So it's visiting dad and doing pizza parties at the facility during the week. It's taking them to every single home game, even though that after 2 hours of church is not easy to do. Every moment we can spend with him, I make sure to make that effort that we do spend that time with him. So it's been awesome. I can't say I would change it though.
That's incredible. And I love that you put so much effort into it. That can't be easy. I want to know, because you mentioned that you were pregnant with Brigham when you and Porter started working this job. What's this experience been like for your little kids, since it's basically all they know, right? So how do they handle it?
They don't know. They literally don't know anything different. And like my 4-year-old just went to her 4th Super Bowl. Like, she has no idea how, like, the rare air she is breathing. In fact, in October, she asked me, when do we go to Daddy's Super Bowl? And I'm like, oh, sweet child, you know nothing. So their life, it's funny to watch them, like play on the field after games and make confetti angels. And it's like, I would have killed for this as a kid. And they just like have no idea. But they do appreciate it at the same time. Like, I don't necessarily think they take it for granted. It kind of bothers me a little bit sometimes when people say like, oh man, your kids are so lucky, or they have no idea. It kind of irks me because I'm like, they sacrifice a great deal for this. Like, they don't see dad for 7 months, unless we're doing something football related.
Right.
So, and they don't, like, they just have to put up with mom during that whole time. So they sacrifice too, and they see those sacrifices. And in fact, this last year when Porter was leaving for training camp, he was trying to like sneak out so the kids didn't see him because the tears and stuff were hard. But I was like, no, we're not doing that. They need to come say goodbye, and they need to see that in order to achieve these kinds of things, greatness, really, it requires a great deal from you. Like, these things don't just happen. There's a sacrifice and there's hard work that comes with that. So you're going to watch it, and you're going to get a front row seat to that. So, I mean, they have been fortunate to be a part of a lot of celebrations and stuff, but they also have been very privy to how much work it takes to get there. And I think that's a really good lesson for them to learn as well.
Absolutely. That's incredible. My last question for you is, what would you say has been your favorite part of being able to be on this journey in Kansas City and watch Porter develop from where he started? I was talking to him last week about 2014 BYU Porter into 2024 Kansas City Chiefs Porter. What's been the favorite part of that journey for you?
This might be like a little cliche, but I think the impact he's had, I think he's been a really good ambassador of the gospel, first and foremost, but then also to an entire community that isn't well represented in professional sports for a number of reasons. He'll get embarrassed that I am even sharing this, but the week of the Super Bowl, we had a number of people reach out about a young boy who got in an ATV accident in Las Vegas, and they tried to save his arm but weren't able to, so he ended up getting it amputated. They were asking Porter the week of the Super Bowl if he could make time to go and visit this boy in the hospital, and he did. And I think my favorite moment that I've ever experienced, I was wrangling kids onto an elevator to go to the family room during one of our home games. And a little boy was getting wheeled in by his mom in a wheelchair. And he had on like a little homemade jersey that he had made. And I didn't think anything of it, but she wheeled him into the elevator and turned him around, and he had written in Sharpie on the back of the jersey the last name Ellett. And I thought, this is the only kid in the whole stadium with this jersey. There's a lot of number 15s and a lot of number 87s, but to this kid, that's who he looks up to. And so I think his impact will go far beyond football. He's showing kids who are a little bit different, or even a lot bit different, that you belong here too. It takes a lot of work, but you belong here too. And so that has by far been my favorite part. I've had so many people, now having gone viral, reached out and been like, man, my son has been YouTubing your husband, and he's learned to tie his shoes with one hand, and we've been trying for years, and now thanks to him, we've learned how to do it. And so I think that's why Porter's truly been put in this position. As much as he's a help within the organization, I think that impact will be, or at least that's what I hope will end up being, his legacy in the long term. So hands down, my favorite part.
So cool. Carlie, you are incredible. I know you guys are super busy. Thank you so much for taking the time with me. And again, congratulations. And you get to spend the rest of the week celebrating, hopefully.
Yes, parade tomorrow. Here we go. More parties.
Thanks so much, Car. Thanks again to Carlie Ellett for joining us on this episode. It was produced by me, Lauren McLean. Her Why senior producer is Cleon Wall. Her Why is a production of BYU Radio.